If you wanted to add pressure to a move to Arsenal, you could pine for it. You could go on strike for it. You could do pretty much everything under the sun to get it to happen. But to add that little cherry on top of the cake to add some pressure, you could take the most famous number associated with this club. This is a special edition of today's Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show, joining you every single day, usually at 8 a.m, but for these special episodes, I'm joined by a special guest. And today's special guest is very special. And it's nice to link up once again with a good friend of the show, good friend of historical Arsenal content creation, Chris Davison. How you doing, mate? You good, you well?
I'm very well, thank you, TC. Very well. As I was saying to you before you went live, pleasure to be back on here again, and good to catch up as well and talk all things the Arsenal, because it's been busy, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since we've last spoken. Of course, listeners that are familiar with our work will know that we linked up, of course, on the Arsenal Way. I think we did a couple of shows after things kind of ended there, and with Bailey and I think Umar as well on the channel. But it's been a big gap. Do you want to give people any more updates, as much as you feel open to telling them about kind of what your journey's been since then and what you've been up to?
Yeah, sure. It's been interesting. Obviously, you mentioned the time with Football London, and a brilliant time it was as well. We did a lot of good work with a very good team. And when my time came to an end there, I wanted to stay in the industry, and I have a big passion for journalism and reporting, especially on football. But another passion of mine is gaming, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people watching this, they've grown up gaming, video games, playing FIFA over the years. And so I thought, how can I stay in the industry, but, explore different avenues and different paths that it has. And so that's how I then got my new job, which is assistant editor at Gfinity, a big video gaming company that some of you viewers might be aware of. And it originally started as a senior football writer there, covering FIFA, but now I've expanded across all of the different sites as assistant editor. So really enjoying that. And like I say, it's been nice because aside from football, another passion of mine is gaming. So, being able to stay within the industry that I have a huge passion for, and obviously stick to the reporting side of things as well has been really nice. And really enjoying it as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic, mate. It's really good to kind of see that, because, I often feel like I am tethered so specifically to Arsenal, and almost fearful to kind of broaden the horizon, because I have interest, love a bit of golf, love a bit of F1. But the idea of breaking out from Arsenal is a daunting thing. So to see that you've done that and done it so successfully is a real inspiration, I think, to those as well that, are feeling of going into the industry. It's an unforgiving place. It's a really tumultuous, unstable environment to try and make a career in. And it's never easy. It gets looked at as a privilege, because when you're in it, it is a privilege, to be able to work every day and talk about football or things related to football, or gaming in your case more so these days, Chris. It's like, I think it's easy to take it for granted, but at the same time, it's, having come from a previous profession of teaching where stability there is, pretty much guaranteed if you've got a permanent role and you can cope with the taxing and ridiculous nature of that job, to go to something which is a lot more unstable is it's tough, and it's graft to keep going. So yeah, we definitely empathize with one another's kind of scenarios and career paths. Speaking of kind of graft, there's been a player that's been grafting pretty darn hard, Chris, to join Arsenal, and it seems as though he's getting his wish, because Viktor Gyokeres, of course, who has boarded a flight, Fabrizio Romano posting that image of Victor with his agent headed towards London to undergo his medical tomorrow, we understand, before he is expected to fly out to Singapore and join up with the Arsenal squad. Perhaps in Singapore, maybe Hong Kong by that point. We'll have to wait and see. But a player that Arsenal have courted for a little while, they've been interested in for quite a bit longer than that. And now a player that's finally got his wish and is joining Arsenal. So just give me kind of your instant reaction, if you can take your mind back to when it first emerged that this looked like it was going to happen. How are you feeling about him being the striker for Arsenal next season?
Excited, Tom, I think. And obviously, there's been a lot of names linked to Arsenal, especially in that striker position. And obviously, throughout the whole summer, people have been torn. Sesko, Gyökeres, which side are you going to choose? And to be fair, I've been pretty neutral and in the middle throughout. To be honest with you, I was in a situation where, look, we just needed a striker, and we've been crying out for it for a very, very long time, haven't we? And of course, when you look at both of their profiles, very, very different players, very different qualities, and obviously both in different stages of their career as well. But yeah, I was in a position where I was just happy with one or the other, to be completely honest with you. However, and again, both players, they'll come with risk, absolutely. But I think with Arsenal, where we are right now, we're in a situation where we've got to win. We want that silverware. We want to take that next level up and compete with the very best, as we've been doing anyway, but we just haven't been able to cross that line. And so I think with someone like Gyökeres, who is, in his prime stages of his career, he's bringing experience as well as a brilliant goal record. So yeah, in terms of when it first started, and obviously the links started to intensify with Gyökeres as well, I was happy, I was excited. I think relieved is a suitable word as well. I know you alluded to that the other day, just relieved that, it was actually making progress and we were finally getting somewhere. So obviously you can question the league he's coming from and the quality that league has overall. And obviously we're going to be questioning how he can adjust to the Premier League and how well he's going to do. But one thing you can't question is his willingness, his desire, his hunger to put on that Arsenal shirt. And for me, that's a really big thing, not just with Gyökeres, but with any new player coming through the door in general. Of course, the skill of that player, the quality of that player is one of the biggest talking points, and understandably so. You need them to perform and you need them to do well, but also bringing in a character that just 110% wanted to play for your club is huge. And I really, really respect that a lot. Obviously, there's been a lot of stories throughout the whole saga about his agents taking sort of or helping him, should I say?
Yeah. Foregoing fees, basically.
Foregoing fees, yeah. And like I say, they're obviously doing that because obviously they want their agent, their player, and their client to be happy. But he's obviously been trying to push for that as well. And when you go into those lengths to get a transfer done, it says a lot about him. It says a lot about his character, and like I say, his willingness, his hunger to actually come to Arsenal. So. Yeah, just like I say, relieved that it's finally making progress. It's nearly there. And yeah, I'm sure when that announcement video drops, hopefully maybe within the next 48 hours, it's going to explode.
Yeah, it's a moment of relief. I think that it got blown out of proportion somewhat, the time it took to get the deal done. I know it felt a really long time, and I've talked about this with the listeners before, but if you go back and you kind of use David Ornstein's reporting on this as a bit of a timeline, if you like, July 6th, he reports Arsenal have began advancing on talks with Gyökeres. It's the first tweet he'd made about Gyökeres all summer since his tweet in March, which was all about Arsenal had, seen Gyökeres on their radar basically for the summer of Andrea Berta, particularly keen. So if you look at Arsenal pivoting from Sesko at the start of July, going forwards, I think it's to July 22nd when it was announced that we had got a verbal agreement in full. That's less than 3 weeks that Arsenal have initiated, or advanced talks more so on the Gyökeres side to completing the deal. And I remember that week from the point where David reported that we'd agreed a fee in principle of 63.5 million euros plus 10 million euros in add-ons. That 9 days between that announcement and then the actual announcement that finally negotiations had come to a conclusion, that was a really long 9 days. And I think that specifically kind of dragged out how people felt that it was, even though in the end, Arsenal managed to conclude this deal in less than 3 weeks. And I think that says something about coverage. Chris, you've got one of the most followed X accounts, as we have to call them now, on social media, and have been there. And whenever a tweet goes out from an account with a significant number of followers, if it's just your opinion or whatever, swaths of replies and opinions come back. Have you been surprised at all this summer about how Arsenal fans have kind of, I don't want to use the word behaved, but like how Arsenal fans have kind of absorbed information and the hyperbole that's been attached to a lot of it this summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something you'll always associate with social media, isn't it? And especially on a platform like X. I think in terms of the way that Arsenal fans have reacted and maybe behaved this summer, sort of reflects the situation the club is in, and it goes back to my point a moment ago. We are so close, aren't we, Tom, to taking that next step and getting our hands on that silverware we so desperately want. And I think because we're heading into this summer, there's so much at stake and a lot of the work for the club to do as well. And especially when it comes to actually achieving and taking that next step as a club and bringing huge success next season, I can kind of understand the way that fans have felt this summer. Obviously, me being one of them, I think it all comes down to you just want what's best for the club, don't you? And of course, there's always going to be those out there that are slightly more rational with their takes and opinions and maybe aren't as patient. And I think, look, and you mentioned it there with the weight between David Ornstein's tweet about a initial verbal agreement and the deal sort of making progress with Gyökeres, and then until this week where there's actually been that final breakthrough. It's been painful, it's been long, but I just, like I say, I think it's because we've been screaming out for this striker for such a long time as well. On top of it being such an important summer for us, I can kind of sympathise and understand why Arsenal fans have been so active, especially on social media this summer, because that, like I say, there's just so much at stake. And again, when it comes to the behaviour of a select few on social media, and we might talk about it later, but the whole sort of conversation around Noni Madueke, for example, following that deal, and the criticism that he was getting. I mean, look, it wasn't even him, his decision at the end of the day. Arsenal wanted him, Mikel Arteta wanted him, Berta wanted him, and he wanted to join, and look, I admittedly I had my question marks surrounding that deal at the beginning, and it wasn't so much around the player himself, because I think he's very talented. He's got a lot of experience already at just 23 years old, and there's so much room for potential to and talent to work with there. For me, it was more to do with the price and how that would potentially affect other deals in the works, how it would affect Ethan's progression and pathway as well. Look, I think maybe it's a point you've used yourself or one of your previous guests. If he was coming from PSV, I don't think there would have been anywhere near as much backlash as what he received. And also, again, any doubt that I had around that deal, when I watched the behind the scenes video of his first day, I was smiling throughout that video, because you could just see how happy he was to be here and how much it meant to him and his family. And it I got the impression that the weight was off his shoulders a little bit when he seemed relieved. He seemed grateful, and he seemed genuinely excited to start his Arsenal career. So, sorry, going off track a little bit there, but again, it just
nostalgia.
But it just brings me back to the point we were sort of speaking about originally about social media in general. Yes, there's been rational takes, been harsh takes, and ones that take it far beyond the line as well. Unfortunately, something that we see far too often on social media, and will probably sadly continue seeing as well. But for the broader point, I genuinely do just get the concern, and from an Arsenal fan point of view, that we just need to get business done, ideally as quickly as possible, because obviously pre-season's now started, and the majority of our business now is taking shape and is being put in place. But just heading into this summer, I think because of how much was at stake for this football club and how much work needed to be done, I do get the fan base's stance. But as always, you sometimes just need to take a step back and before you post stuff on social media and before you take a certain stance and point of view on something, you need to give it some thought and go in with a calm head. But easier said than done with some people, unfortunately.
Yeah, with most, with ourselves. I am a regular debater on social media, as everybody knows. I love getting into discussions with people. It's something I'm passionate about. I like debating football. I like talking football. I like talking Arsenal. I like fact checking. That's a really important. I'm doing it in the chat box as you were talking there, Chris, around kind of this misconception that Arsenal are always slow when it comes to transfers. In 3 of the last 4 summers, Arsenal have done their business, the majority of their business, nearly all of their business, prior to pre-season being completed, in many cases before pre-season started. This summer, 4 came in before we flew to Singapore. 2 more are coming in before our second friendly. If you go back to 2023, you've got Rice, Timber, Havertz, all came in before pre-season. Season before that, Jesus, Vieira came in before pre-season flew, and then Zinchenko just after the first game of pre-season played the next day against Chelsea. If you want to ask a question about how swift Arsenal get the players we think they need done, that's a different conversation. But when it comes to kind of who they're targeting, who their priorities are, who they want to sign, they tend to do that pretty quickly. So I think they're 2 different debates. I agree, Arsenal, in terms of getting the right players in at the right times, they can have debates. We can have conversations more so about that. But when it comes to them identifying the players they want and moving for them in the summer windows, they tend to do it quite quickly. It was just 2024, where with Calafiori, it dragged on. He didn't play in pre-season. Moreno dragged on, didn't play in pre-season. 2 loans in on deadline day. 2024 was a bad window. We all know that. And I think that's led to the reaction, the response that we've seen during this window. Just quickly, nice to see FK in the chat. It says it's really good to see Chris back on screen. Hope all is well, King. It's very, very, very nice thing to say about you, Chris.
Indeed.
FK there.
Thanks, FK.
Dylan says, first time in 2 years following and finally catching a live show. Got the popcorn in the microwave. Thank you, Dylan. It's good to see you catching a live show. I understand maybe you live in the West time-wise. 8 a.m. might not be the best time for you to do shows. DJ pointing out it's an Arsenal Way reunion. Also good to see as well. Listener from back in the day. And Morgie segues us nicely onto the next topic around Gyökeres, which of course is the number that he's taking. Morgie says, Tom, of course, 14 is iconic, but the number 10 has my vote. Wilshere, Merson, Ozil, Van Persie, and the supreme magnificent Dennis Bergkamp, of course. And this is kind of the conversation. Pete dropped in a super chat as well to say, morning, Tom and Chris, and everyone watching. Finally, we get our number 9. Slightly 14 is, of course, the number he's going to take. It is big pressure. He would have, it wouldn't just been about the club going, here you go, here's number 14. That number doesn't just get given out. That number's just not given. That comes when players ask for it. I'm aware that Eddie Nketiah, when he signed his new deal, a part of those contract negotiations were Eddie Nketiah wanting the number 14 shirt. You get that number when you ask for it and the club deem you ready to take that shirt. A lot of talk was had when Nketiah took that shirt. He still earned Arsenal 30 million quid in the end, so I was quite happy with that contract renewal. But this is a different type of giving of the number, handing of the number. It's the first player since... I know Theo Walcott had number 14, of course, but I think it's the first player since Thierry Henry where really you're looking at the player being a natural number 9 who could be an Arsenal starter for the next however many years and take Arsenal to the next level. So what do you make of Gyökeres wanting the 14, taking it, and the pressure that comes with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bold move, but I like it, and again, it just reaffirms his bravery and hunger to put on that shirt and do well. And look, I think, again, obviously, taking the number 14 shirt by itself brings huge pressure. And there was already huge pressure on him anyway, because, as I mentioned earlier, the whole stance and view on Arsenal bringing in a striker has been going on for, well, what feels like for so long now.
I forgot about Aubameyang. I will say that. I just completely forgot about Aubameyang there. So yeah, that's absolutely my bad. I just completely mind blanked, ignored that portion. Sorry, Chris. Go on.
No, you're good. And yeah, like I say, there's going to be huge pressure anyway. But for him to, and he would have known that, obviously, and he would have been following the situation quite closely over the summer, and obviously because it has been going on for quite a while now, there's been so much attention, hasn't there, surrounding this deal. So there was already big pressure on him, you know, stemming from the whole saga of this happening, and then also the fact that Arsenal have been crying out for a striker for such a long time. So for him to now add to that pressure a little bit by saying and demanding that, look, I want that number 14 shirt. You know, it comes with a lot of weight. It comes with a lot of history and legacy. But I think, you know, and checking and looking at the player and him, not just as a player but as a character off the pitch as well. I think he's someone that will handle that pressure without a doubt. You know, and he's shown how ruthless he is on the pitch. He's shown how hard he works off it as well, and how committed he is to growing as a player and as a person. And I just don't see that all of the noise affecting him in any way, shape, or form, if I'm being honest. I just think he uses composure, calmness, and obviously we all hope that reflects in his time with us here, and I think it will. Obviously, proof is in the pudding as always. Time will tell. But the fact that it's coming from him as well, and he's pushing for that to have that number again, it excites me even more, TC. It doesn't necessarily worry me. It doesn't necessarily make me nervous. It makes me more excited more than anything. And like I say, just because of his quality as a player, but also his mindset as well, I just think he'll handle it really, really well. I'll probably be jinxing him here, poor lad. But no, honestly, I don't know if you agree with that, TC. But I just don't know. I just think with the experience and I was watching a video on X last night actually, and it was his sort of story so far, how he started in the lower tiers of Swedish football, made his way up, obviously joined the Brighton Academy. Didn't quite work out for him for numerous reasons, although he was still scoring plenty of goals. But obviously that real big breakthrough, that first breakthrough at senior level came at Coventry, didn't it? And he's someone that has faced a lot of challenges over the years, and he's had to work really, really hard to get to where he is today. You know, it would have been, and we've seen it with so many players over the years that are, you know, initially showing a lot of signs of promise when they're young, and no matter how hard they work, no matter how many sort of moves you get as well, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't happen for you. And on a few occasions, it seemed that would be the case for Gyökeres as well. But he's bounced back from those challenges and from those setbacks to become the player he is today. And he's become such an impressive player. So, you know, in terms, you know, when you talk about handling pressure, he's sort of handled that pressure since, you know, the early days of his career. And he's suffered those setbacks, but he's bounced back from them. So I think, you know, like it just brings me back to my point is it doesn't really make me nervous about the whole 14 jersey. Yes, it adds to the pressure, absolutely. But I just think from what we know of him as a player and as a character so far, and obviously we'll continue to learn more about him in the coming weeks as well, I just don't see it being an issue for him. I think he'll embrace it.
I love it. I love it, Chris. I really think that, you know, fair play to the guy. Like, it endears him, if anything, to more so, I think, to the Arsenal supporters. Not only the way in which he's kind of cultivated this move by doing everything in his power, really, to make it happen. You know, you can talk about, is that a concern? I don't think so. I think there's context to how he behaved because, of course, he feels hard done by that there was supposedly a gentleman's agreement previously with Sporting to, you know, enact a transfer at a lower figure. I think that is something that he can point to and say, you know, that wasn't respected in his view, and that's why he's refused to play for them and really forced this move. And, you know, he's won them 2 titles, you know, in Portugal. He scored a ridiculous number of goals for them as well. Some massive nights, beating the likes of Manchester City in the Champions League in their own ground. You know, he's been a huge part of that. And now moves to Arsenal, where we finally get to see if he is indeed, you know, the real deal. And that's been the big question mark. It's not like Arsenal are signing the Declan Rice version of a centre-forward here who's got guarantees in the Premier League and, you know, ridiculous amounts of experience playing at that level already. They're investing in a player who I think, you know, the money that we're paying, 55 million plus 8.5 or whatever it is, you know, that is still a really reasonable amount of money. I mean, I think I was listening to the Arscast this morning and James described it very much as kind of in the bracket of what Lacazette and Aubameyang both cost. It's not, it's not taken Arsenal to new levels in terms of spending on centre forwards. It's not what they would have spent on Alexander Isak, for example. That would have been a very, very different figure, probably more than double than what we're paying for Gyökeres. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see him in the shirt. I'm excited to see him doing the celebration. I'm excited to see the announcement video. I've got my hopes. Everyone knows what I'm hoping to see from that announcement video, and hopefully Gabriel will be involved in one way, shape, or form with that clip. We will wait and see. But, it's how he now fits into the team, Chris. And one player who, of course, is very much in the spotlight at the moment, because we don't really have too many centre forwards to choose from, is Kai Havertz. So how do you really kind of see his role in the team changing, working, adapting to the arrival of Gyökeres, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting, won't it? We all know that Arteta rates Havertz very, very highly. And to be fair, again, it's just like Madueke, another former Chelsea player who came through the doors with a lot of criticism and a lot of uncertainty in terms of how he'll fit in and if he was sort of the player that we needed at the time. But again, he's someone else who, in my opinion, deserves a lot of credit because he's been very, very important for us. So I think it wouldn't shock me if we get to that first day of the season and Havertz is up front. But then again, I think a lot of that will depend on how Gyökeres, once the deal's over the line, as we say, hopefully in the next 48 hours or so, how he adapts to the team and how he performs, not only in training, but in the remaining pre-season friendlies as well. So, look, we haven't been able to associate a depth problem or a sort of a competition problem in the striker position for a very long time, have we? So it's again, we're in a situation now where it's a nice headache for Arteta to have. I don't get me wrong. I think moving forward and once we're fully up and running in the new season, Gyökeres will be the starter more often than not. He's come. Let's be honest. He's coming in to be a starter, certainly from my point of view, anyway. Because he's a natural goal scorer. He's a natural number 9. Whereas Havertz, there's been a lot of debate, hasn't there, where his best position is, and he hasn't really got that natural instinct and in front of goal. And I think that's fair. Whereas someone like Gyökeres, he's been a striker. Obviously, he has occasionally, especially in his younger days, played on the left as well. But he's coming in to be a striker. That is his main position. He's coming in to do something that we've struggled with over the last couple of seasons, and that's score lots of goals. So, like I say, I think to begin with, and again, it depends on how Gyökeres performs throughout the rest of pre-season, but it wouldn't shock me if Havertz starts at Man United purely because he's Premier League experienced already. He's ready to go. And obviously, he's looked pretty sharp in pre-season as well. Obviously, he got that goal against Watford, which was behind closed doors. He looked sharp against Milan as well, even though he didn't get on the score sheet. He's looking a lot bulkier, isn't he? That's been a big talking point about Havertz. So I think he'll provide some decent competition for Gyökeres. I don't know if it will be enough for Havertz to be the starter for us moving forward. But like I say, it's just nice to have that extra bit of competition and depth now. So yeah, I don't think Havertz is a top professional. He's a competitor as well. He'll want to play as much as possible and to prove a point to Mikel, absolutely. Yeah. But I just with the natural goal scoring ability and qualities that Gyökeres is going to bring to this team, the fee we're paying for him. And the fact he's taken the number 14 as well, I just think it won't be too long before we see him become the starter for us moving forward.
Indeed. Yeah, Gooner says, would you still prefer to keep Havertz centre forward or try him in midfield? I don't think it's a case of like being binary and picking one or the other. I think he'll be operating in different roles, as Chris has been talking about. So, yeah, I think that there are opportunities for Havertz to be used. A lot of you in the chat will say, check Hand of Arsenal's Twitter. We need to know what he's been saying. It's nothing too major. It's just reporting that Andrea Berta is exploring the potential sale of Gabriel Jesus this summer. Clubs in his native country Brazil have inquired, as have some European clubs. Let's see if the situation develops. From my point of view, this is a really difficult scenario. Jesus is, of course, continuing to be rehabilitated from that knee surgery that he had earlier in the year. He's not expected back from that injury until the end of the year. And that, by the way, is a period when, of course, it's the start of the Brazilian season. The Brazilian season runs in calendar years, not in the same kind of time frame that we do. So it wouldn't really necessarily make too much sense for those Brazilian clubs to come in for it. Doesn't mean that we're wrong for looking for potentially, suitors in some ways for Jesus. If Arsenal can get a very decent bid from him, with the expectation that he joins a club and, of course, then comes back to fitness and starts playing for them later on. But it's a positive thing that it's being considered, but I still would be somewhat surprised, quite shocked actually, if he did end up going. Just before we go into the chat box and tackle some of your questions, there's been some nice comments in here. Jackie says, great content, nice to see you back here. Chris Albert says, Chris should join you more often, always good perspectives from him. And Harvey says, missed you, Chris. Hope to see you more times on the channel, as I'm sure you will. Chris will be back at some point. We won't leave it as long this time, Chris. We'll make sure.
No, definitely not.
Jackie says, Tom and Chris, if Liverpool do sign Alexander Isak, do we at the very least need Eze to at least give Arteta a chance? Also, with the holes Liverpool still have in defence and midfield, can they go for him? And I'll just quickly say, yes, they definitely can. But what do you make about the idea that if they sign Isak, it puts even more pressure onto Arsenal landing that extra player like an Eze this summer?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, and I would agree. Prior to whether or not they end up getting Isak, and obviously prior to us getting Gyökeres over the line as well, what Liverpool have done this summer is still very, very impressive. And they've been ruthless in the market. They're spending money, and what my worry is, Tom, is I think we're still a little bit off Liverpool. Like before the window even opened, obviously is the way that last season ended. We weren't at the same level, then they were just so much better. But I don't think we were that far off. And especially in the games that we played against them last season, it was tight. It was pretty equal. But now my worry is that they were already ahead of us, and now they're going another level ahead of us, if that makes sense. And I just think right now we're kind of where we were at the end of last season, even though we've bought players and improved, and they've bought players and improved. I just feel as if there is, and especially if they manage to get Isak over the line as well, that for me that would take the sort of gap between us and them that little bit further, and that is a concern. But I think we can reduce that if we were to go and get Eze. So look, my stance on I'm trying, because obviously there's a lot of speculation and reports on a daily basis where Eze's name's cropping up and alongside Arsenal. I think from my perspective, it's that it's not going to move forward until we offload. And I think I look specifically at someone like Trossard, for example.
Yeah.
Because we know, look, Madueke's come in, primarily going to be back up in competition for Saka on the right. The whole talk around Ranieri and him signing the contract, Arsenal see him more as a number 10 and sort of like a rotational option for Odegaard. And at the moment, we already have two options on the left in Trossard and Martinelli. So I think I look and think at that as well. Yeah, all fair and well bringing Eze in, but where's he gonna play for us? Where's he gonna fit in exactly? And obviously he's versatile. He can play through the middle. He can play out wide. But I would imagine Arsenal right now, with the current squad that they have and the numbers they have in each position, they're thinking, look, as much as we would love to go and get Eze right now, it just doesn't make sense. We would need to offload first. So that's certainly where I'm at with that, and the stance. I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself, because I love Eze. I think he's a fantastic player, and he would just fit in this Arsenal team like a glove. It's like a match made in heaven, I think. But yeah, I think in terms of that question, look, yes, it does add more pressure if Liverpool go and get Isak on top of what they've already done this summer. It would definitely up the ante, and it would definitely add pressure on Arsenal to go and get that cherry on top, that icing on the cake. I hope you hadn't left it on my own TC. But yeah,
back.
He's back. God, look, it's been a while since I've been on a podcast and a show, TC. The last thing I need is actually taking the lead here. Look.
Taking the reins.
Honestly. But no, yeah, absolutely. It would be the cherry on top, wouldn't it be? The icing on the cake for Arsenal if they were to go and get Eze. And I think we need that anyway. But if Liverpool go and get Isak, then absolutely it just reinforces that idea and the need for him as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100% reinforces that idea and that need. There's no doubt about that. There was another point that was quite well made in the chat. But I'll see if I can find it. I thought I started it, but I'm not quite sure. It was effectively along the lines of the gap between us and Liverpool isn't as big as some people make it out to be. And I agree with that. I swear I had it. Maybe now I've refreshed my StreamYard, it's disappeared. But when it comes to the idea that our team, if they sign Isak, is just so far and away better. For me, our defenders are better than theirs. For me, we've got a better midfield than theirs if you consider Havertz is going to play in probably their forward line more so than in the midfield. They have a better attack than us, like a vastly better attack collectively than we do. And that's the big difference. It's between the two sides' attacks. Like Salah is a better player than Saka right now. Saka's a great player, but Salah is just on an elite level, amongst the best players in the world right now. In my opinion, should be up there for Ballon d'Or winner probably this year. I think there's too much kind of debate around that. You've got the striker situation at the moment. At the moment, it's at Hugo Ekitike. Gyökeres is you'd probably rank higher right now as a centre forward compared to Hugo. But if it's Isak, of course, they then, without a doubt, take the edge in that race. And on the left, that's where Arsenal's fall down is right now. Our left-hand side is just not going to. It's not going to be the same. So the back four, Frimpong playing right back, offensively exciting, dangerous, but defensively there's question marks about him. Jurriën Timber for me is a better all-round fullback than Jeremy Frimpong. Van Dijk, 34 years of age now. You've got a very good debate here between him and Saliba. If at this point, him and Saliba is a very, very good debate, and that you could split hairs between them. Gabriel for me is proven to be the best left-sided centre half in the league over the last 2 seasons. He's been absolutely excellent. And then Miles Lewis-Skelly is proven to be a hell of a player. He goes up against Milos Gyökeres in comparison for next season. You've got a midfield of Ødegaard, Declan Rice and Zubomen next season compared to McAllister, Gravenberch and Szoboszlai. You could arguably throw Havertz in there as well, potentially, if he's going to play 10. We don't really know where he's going to play at the moment. So, yeah, it's tired. The point is it's not about who's better than the other. It's about the gap. And for me, the gap between the two sides is not wild. It's nowhere near as wild. I am very conscious of the time. We'll probably go around if we've got go to quarter past, Chris, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, all good, mate.
Sweet. Leandros says Liverpool and Arsenal very equal in my opinion when both fully fit. In my opinion, our squad build is more robust, while Liverpool have a couple of extra match winners. That's probably fair. I think there's a few more holes in that Liverpool team, but there's a few more match winners in that Liverpool team as well. And he says, are we excited and ready to embrace having a striker profile in Gyökeres, which we probably have never had? Nothing beautiful, but full of power, aggression, and effectiveness over everything else. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It sort of brings me back to my point I made earlier. It's just going to be so nice to have a natural goal scorer in this team. Someone who, as Andy says there, maybe not the prettiest to watch every game, and but although saying that, the clips I've seen of him, he is strong on the ball. Not a bad dribbler at all as well. Can get past players with ease. Obviously, a lot of that's down to his raw strength and power. But yeah, like Andy says there, just aggression and effectiveness can make things happen in tight spaces and in situations out of nothing as well. As everyone who's been sort of looking at him over the last few weeks, his striking power of the ball as well, and just how effective he is in general. I just think he's going to make a huge difference. Obviously, a very different player compared to Havertz, who we were speaking about a minute ago. And again, it will be nice to have that mixture of qualities and strengths up top as well. So yeah, really looking forward to it. It's just going to be a refreshing sight, a refreshing change as well to have someone like Gyökeres in this team. And yeah, just very, very excited to see how he does for us when he joins.
Yeah, absolutely. Just if you can get kind of, as long as the goal comes quickly, the first goal, I think that, the floodgates can open. It's just however long it is between kind of that process of him getting that first goal, that's what will be hanging on him if he doesn't score early on. And with Arsenal having a really tough start to the season as well, there's no guarantees you get that kind of first goal, but hopefully it will come pretty quickly. Just a quick one from Sally says, why do you think there was no contact with his ex-agent to see that he was 100% settled? I mean, obviously, Sally, we don't know. We can't make the assumption that there was or was not contact. Andrea Burt has been very, very open at talking to a lot of targets. We know that Isak was, thought of as a player that, Arsenal really liked, but even if he was available and is now, the idea that we would spend £150 million, that's the asking price for him, was just beyond any realm of possibility, even for this summer at the beginning. We wanted to do more business, more broad business. We wanted to sign more players in a number of positions. We'll finish on this one, Chris, from Ode Guan Kenobi, who says, where does this transfer window rank all time for Arsenal in both your opinions? I'll say, imagine hypothetically, Chris, we end the window with Eze on top of what else we've done. Can you think of a window better than this one?
It's a good question. Off the top of my head, no.
You're always tough to try and think back to the years of.
off the top of my head, and especially if we do get Eze over the line as well, probably not. I don't think. What about you, TC? Where are you sitting on that one?
Yeah, I've written a piece about this, about how this would be if Arsenal sign Eze, the greatest transfer window of all time. Because if you go, 2023 was a great window. Declan Rice, Havertz, Timber, David Raya, they're four players who have played plenty of games in the starting 11 for this Arsenal team in a season where they nearly won the title. You can go back to 2021, Ben White, Odegaard, Ramsdale. It's a good window, but it's not as good as this one. If you kind of go back to windows under Arsene Wenger, again, they don't really match up. The summer that we signed Ozil, he was the standout. We didn't really sign anyone else. The summer we signed Alexis Sanchez, great summer, but Chambers, Welbeck, Debussy, Ospina, these aren't comparable to the signings that we're making right now. The 2012, Santi Cazorla, Podolski, Giroud was a decent window, but again, nowhere near the level. You have to kind of go back, I think, to the 90s, like when you're looking at some of those particular summers, Overmars and Petit, Grimandi coming in 1997, and obviously slightly earlier than that we had Anelka, but Anelka was kind of like, even though he's kind of thought of in 1997 because it was done later, it wasn't technically counting in the 97 summer window. It was a strange kind of situation there. And Patrick Vieira obviously came in 1996 as well. You can talk about Thierry Henry in 99, but he with Davor Schuker, and Silvinho. It's more based on what those players ended up doing than the actual window itself at that time when it was done. So I can't rank the summer we signed Thierry Henry as our best window, because if you cast your mind back, which for some is impossible because you weren't born, back to 1999, that window where we just signed Thierry Henry, it was never ordained that he would become the player that he became at that point. We weren't signing, Robert Pires, for instance, when we signed him, it was already of a very decent level when we took him to new levels at Arsenal. Dennis Bergkamp was not particularly rated at Inter Milan when we signed him, and we took him to the levels, and he took himself to those levels at Arsenal. So for me, when you're looking specifically at a window, you're looking at the basis on what it is in that moment, and what it was for us. That's why I think 2023 is massive, because we broke the £100 million record that we had for Declan Rice. That was an amazing moment, alongside a record-breaking window where we spent over £200 million in total. If we sign Eze, we will break our transfer record again for a single summer. And I sincerely hope that we do. So, yeah, it would be a record-breaking summer for total spent. And I don't think we would have brought that many starters and that many players of that caliber in a single window. So, yeah, for me, this would go down as the greatest transfer window Arsenal have ever had if Eze comes through. Exciting times, and hopefully it comes to pass. Chat box, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you being here. Make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Make sure you're following Chris, of course, on his socials. You can, of course, find him on social media at @CDavison_AFC. You can find him there. Any other platforms that the people need to find you on, Chris, and tell the people what you're going to be up to and what you're going to be doing?
Just mainly X, as you mentioned there, mate. And cracking on as an assistant editor at Gfinity, as I mentioned earlier. Obviously, if you're into video games, head on over. There's something there for every gamer, all genres, all games. No matter what you're into, no matter what console you play on as well. So yeah, we're doing some really good work over there, and really enjoying it so far. But of course, always keeping a very, very close eye on my beloved Arsenal. And it's been really, really good to catch up with you today, Tom, and talk about the window and what's been happening. So thanks for all the love from your chat as well. Really appreciate it. And yeah, as you said earlier, let's not leave it as long this time.
Indeed, no, you definitely get you back on. Yeah, I saw Bailey the other week, and I was saying to him that we need to get a reunion sorted out at some point,
Yes.
either physically or on a podcast. Any of those is great for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, listeners. As I said, I'll be back with you tomorrow morning for a usual 8 a.m. episode. There'll be no show on Sunday. I'm going to make that call now. I'm not going to do a show on Sunday. I'm at a wedding tomorrow. I don't need that hanging over me that I might have to get up at 8 a.m. and do a show. I'm going to enjoy this wedding that I'm going to. The speech is now done. I'm very happy about that because I did leave it to the last minute, and he doesn't watch this, so he won't need to know about it. But yeah, I left it very much to the last minute. So final drafts are going in with the missus tonight just to check. She's a little too sensitive, I think, to some of the jokes. So I think I might ignore some of her advice, but it's worth it. I've been practicing these cold opens on the show, so hopefully the jokes will land tomorrow. But as I say, I'll speak to you tomorrow morning still at 8 a.m. UK time. I won't be with you on Sunday, so we'll be back on Monday after that. Make sure you drop a like on the video. Make sure you subscribe, all the usual YouTubey stuff. And as always, up the Arsenal.